All right, welcome to BCB Live, the safest station in the nation. Drive safe. Dave here along with Double Check Dale and Blake, man of the boards. We are here talking about some cool stuff. You can't miss it in the news today. If you missed it, you missed it. But I'm talking a little bit about the release of
Brittany Griner
from the Soviet Union, who, yes, is at an open conflict with Ukraine, in which we support openly. So they were able to make a move and get some things done to get this deal through, and she is already on her way home. We did, however, have to give up a
arms dealer.
Arms dealer. Yes, an arms dealer, which everybody wants, right? I mean,
that's right.
You know, it's not a party without an arms dealer,
No.
right? I mean, seriously, why even, if they're not on the list, banned, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm talking about? Socialite, arms dealer, you know, wait staff, those open bar, those kinds of things necessary for a successful party. Arms dealer, we gave them an arms dealer who'd been serving, I think, years in prison and had, 16 years left on his sentence or something like that?
But
So
we probably got out of him what we needed to get out of him.
maybe
It's
so,
just
whatever the case may be. I just hope we take stock in knowing that as we continue to do these things,
it opens the door for
it opens a possibility
Yeah.
for people in other countries arresting Americans,
Yep.
and the possibility of exchange trade on people they want back. Kind of got to be careful on how you deal it and what you deal. I am shocked, however, though, we did not get the Marine to come home.
Yeah, that one surprises me.
Blake,
also.
what's his name?
Surprised me.
Paul
Whelan?
Whelan.
Yeah, Paul Whelan. Yeah, who's over there right now on charges of espionage? Correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they're probably still working some backdoor or backroom deals,
Yeah,
hopefully.
you know,
and a lot more goes on in these type of things than we hear in the news.
Yeah, but she is on the way home, safe and sound from what I understand, and en route to the United States. So glad to see any American returned home that deserves to do so for whatever reason. I don't think the labor camps in Russia for 16 years warranted
I think their
crime.
idea of hard labor is a little different
Yeah,
than our idea of
their idea of hard labor.
going
yeah.
out to pick trash up alongside the
Yeah,
road versus big
it's
rocks,
not
small rocks.
By the way, I just want everybody to know it's not community service. It's a different type of community service that they do there than what we do here. Anyway, so there. Look, I did want to mention. I saw a very interesting article come
Electric
out.
vehicles, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's
It was an A-Tree report sent out, and it was stating that the United States isn't truly ready for mass vehicle electrification. I mean, we're pushing for it. You know what?
Yeah. There's a surprise.
Yeah, it's a shock. What do you mean we're not ready? We're not ready for mass vehicle. We are ready to introduce it. We are ready to get it started. We are ready to create new and inventive ways to be out there. But some of the things on there from this report was very interesting. First one was the United States, the electricity and its demand. Just in over-the-road trucks alone, it would take 10% of all electricity produced in the United States to get that done. And if you did all electric vehicles, half of the electricity the United States produces today would have to go in for transportation of some sort. Yeah. So obviously we're not making enough electricity to do the demands that are necessary. And also, I didn't realize this, and I should have, electrical vehicle production. The raw materials necessary to create batteries. If you wanted a battery electric vehicle, you have to have certain things, cobalt, nickel, lithium, graphite, these things like that to create these awesome batteries. And right now, they're saying that it could take anywhere between 8 and 34 years with the materials at present to even produce this for the United States alone. Yeah. But if you wanted to get technical with it, it would require almost half of all of the resources in the world to just generate the United States and electrical vehicles, which probably isn't going to happen.
Yeah, we're probably either going to.
And then your answer to that was, let's invade a country. I was like, let's
I
not
didn't
do that.
I didn't say it that way. It looks like to get
You
that
did
amount of
say
resources.
that. Okay, what was the good way that you said it?
Well, there's really probably not a good way, but to get that amount of resources, I mean, they're not homegrown. We're going to have to go someplace
Buy
else.
it. Some of them are. Some of these resources
yeah, but
are
I
here.
mean,
Canada. I mean, Alaska and here, but not to the extent of like someplace like Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan's one of the most rich raw materials of some of these materials for batteries in the world. And they aren't our best ally. Just saying. So the price might be different for us than other people. And then the other thing that was neat was that it also mentioned that it would require, we would need more chargers.
I was going to ask about that.
Than there are current parking spaces for the trucks out there on the road. And we already have a shortage of parking spaces out there, and we're trying to meet that demand. So we don't have the charging infrastructure available. I think it said something like $38 billion investment to get some of that charging station to do that. So some really interesting points. I do know that we are in communication with Atri to get somebody in here to talk on this subject. So it was a really neat article that they produced out. And by the way, all the findings and everything that Atri does, you can get online at atri.com. or atri.org, and you can go there and locate some of their information. Great and valuable information, 100% on some of that. I tell you what, just a neat read. You sit there and you realize to yourself, yeah, I don't think we got enough stuff to make batteries.
Yeah.
And I don't think we got enough charging stations. And I know that was the first thing that came to mind. And then I didn't realize we may not have enough electricity, period. In stock.
Yeah.
And to get all of the transportation stuff. And that's only on BEVs, battery electric vehicles.
Yeah, and I'd read some of that stuff a couple years ago when they started talking about just four-wheelers, just cars doing that, as if we went to, everybody all of a sudden went to electric vehicles. We don't have enough electricity. We don't have enough infrastructure to do that. And so it's what Atri's saying about the trucks, yeah, I can believe that, just never really read it. And so look forward to digging into that article a little bit more.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a multi-pronged attack that we're going to have to do. Some of these hydrogen propulsion engines that they are doing now that not only use chemical energy but also combustion energy with a hydrogen that produce basically just water. I'll tell you, some of those solutions are neat and fundamentally necessary. I think we're going to have to solve this carbon emission problem. We're going to have to go at it in many ways.
Yeah. And I think batteries will still have to change because, like I said, there's a lot of metals that go into that, and there's not a great abundance of some of them. We tried using them all for that, so I think your batteries will have to change. I think we'll have to reconsider how we charge instead of just plug and play. Maybe it's something in the roadways.
I will tell you that as you look back and you talk about it for an instance, batteries themselves, the technology on batteries has changed so dramatically over the last 30 years. I mean, I remember back in the day, you had basically 4 different kinds of batteries. You had the A, the C's, the D's, and the that kind,
yep.
and the 9-volt.
And the 9-volt for your big old flashlight.
And you stick your tongue out. But I'll tell you, there's a reason why it's twofold. Number one, your cell phone. Being so compact and so powerful. There are two things about that make it so valuable. Number one, the electrical components actually aren't near as valuable as the battery that's located within the unit itself. In fact, a lot of people don't realize that when you turn some of these phones back in, they're going after the raw materials that are in there with these batteries because they're there and they're very expensive, and you can recycle those raw materials in those batteries because those batteries are what make do you remember the old phones, the portables that came in a suitcase, or they anyway
not the suitcase. I remember the first
the
mobile phones
with tall, and the one that had they didn't last very long, but batteries have really come a long way in technology wise and lasting a long time. The phones themselves typically last many hours on a charge.
Yeah. And it used to be, I mean, in the old days, cell phones, the first thing that wore out on them was the batteries. Now that's not so
Or
much
the
case.
buttons,
Yeah.
when you know, the Nokia, the buttons, they wore out because
Yeah, all of a
they
sudden it
would,
was hard dialing somebody with a
you
nine.
had to,
so-
yeah, well, you had to text, you had to hit the same button 3 times to get the right letter. Yeah, I was horrible at that then. I'm still horrible at it today. All right, I'll tell you what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back, and we're going to talk to Paul, and pretty innovative guy, creative guy, on some of the stuff that he's doing to help create and make focus to by using visualization here in the trucking industry and videography. So we'll be back in just a second, right after this message on BCB Live, the safest station in the nation.
You're watching BCB Live, the safest station in the nation. BCB Live covers freight. Here we are now at 21% of record freight being rejected. News
down in Texas. We're going to talk a little bit about this. We had another $1.5 million seizure. If ever there's a time to do a pre or post trip, it's if you're doing something wrong.
weather, traffic.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to some traffic and weather with Buckle Up Bob. You can kind of see where the visibility can be compromised a little bit. Again, right where that rain is.
And most importantly, safety.
One of the things that we must do is make sure that safety is the number one thing that we focus on.
Going into an intersection, yellow is not the way. That's to clear an intersection, not to enter an intersection.
Tune in weekdays from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. Central Standard Time. You can watch BCB Live through LinkedIn, YouTube, or Facebook. So what are you waiting for? Subscribe today and follow BCB Live.
Hi, my name is Officer Tim Tuttle, and I'm here today to talk to you about a big misunderstanding in the transportation industry.
Thanks for calling Fisker Recruiting.
Hi, I ran into one of your drivers and I was really interested in figuring out more about your company.
Oh, how'd you hear about us?
I just told you I talked to one of your drivers.
Hey guys, it's me, Tim Tuttle, and I'd always heard that the grass is greener on the other side, and turns out the grass is way greener, but it sure smells different. That's because they use grade A manure. That means poop.
You would think it would be so simple to take something from A to B. They look at truckers and they think easy. You get behind the wheel, you drive.
We are honored as a company today to be able to participate and support REEs across America, to remember, honor, teach, and Bennett's core patriotism value, our love of country, our love of flag, and our men and women of our armed services who have served and paid the ultimate sacrifice. We're here to raise awareness in our community and state that we're here to raise money to be able to lay 15,000 wreaths at the tombstone at Andersonville National Cemetery to honor the fallen.
All right, and we're back. Drive Safe Dave here on BCB Live. We've got Paul Gibson, co-host of Cents Per Mile and co-host of Bright Lights Media. That was a small yet compacted, somewhat hodgepodge, put together version of some of the things that you do, right, Paul?
Yep. That's what it was.
Hey, so look, let's just talk a little bit about what Bright Lights Media is over there at KC. Tell me what it is.
Well, so basically I make videos for trucking companies and then additional like proactive content for drivers. My whole thing was I was a recruiting and marketing manager for like 5 years. And we started doing some campaigns. We got into video, and the videos we were making were a little bit more edgy, a little bit more self-aware as far as like, you know, the situational part of the industry goes. They started doing really good. People were like, hey, you should make our videos. I was like, no, these people will fire me. And then more people were like, hey, you should make our videos. And then I was like, oh, okay. And so I talked to my wife, bet my mortgage on it, and here I am 5 years later.
Do you and basically you are out doing it just in the trucking industry alone, or are you doing other things? Because most of what you talked about there was pretty much primarily trucking.
Yeah, it's 100% trucking. I don't do weddings or, you know, like product videos and stuff like that. It's just
do weddings. Yeah, that's cool. What if it's a truck driver wedding? No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, that'd be a different story. I'd probably do it.
You know, we saw up there on there, and you develop characters. You develop some of the things that you do to try to get your point across. What was Tim Tuttle? Officer Tim Tuttle. What character is that?
Well, so Officer Tim Tuttle was just a variation of Tim Tuttle. So the company that I used to work for when I was a recruiter and then recruiting and marketing manager was Riverside Transport. And basically, like, a lot of stuff like that, a lot of advertising goes better if you create a character, because a character helps you tell the story, essentially. And that's really what marketing should be, is really a lot of it is storytelling, you know, or at least branding is. And so kind of created it out of sort of a sketchy situation. So we were trying to figure out what some competitors were doing. So I would call around and pretend to be an owner-operator to find out what other companies were offering, and I made up the name Tim Tuttle, which I then went ahead and used for the character when that came up later. But yeah, so I mean, ultimately, that's really what that was. But the whole idea of those commercials was to be funny. To be funny and then present the information in a way where it's self-aware. Like, so for instance, like the one where I'm holding the bag of manure where I'm like, oh, the grass is greener on the other side, but that's because they use manure. So it's taking a lot of tropes that you hear in trucking and pointing out the parts of them that are terrible that the company can't help fix. And then talking about how, hey, this is a rough job, but these are the things we can help with. And it resonated really well. And he was just a reoccurring character that kind of turned into a brand. And it was cool for me because it's like, you can't really fire me because I'm the company mascot. So.
Yeah. kind of the character. I know all too well what it means to be kind of like the company mascot. And you know, you can't shoo away from the door because you keep putting food out front, right? I mean, as long as you keep putting food outside, I'm still gonna, it's like a big stray. I'm still gonna keep coming around. Let me ask you a quick question, Paul. When you got into this, and you started to get to these, tell me a little bit about your hurdles that you had to get over really quick. I mean, just kind of tell me what it is that you had to get past. Was it yourself? Was it the equipment? Was it technology? Or what was it? Some of the expertise? Tell me what some of the genuine hurdles you had to get to.
I mean, really, the only hurdle for me was I had to learn how to film because I didn't know how to do it. You know, so that was what happened was with those RTI commercials. I didn't actually film them, but I did star in them. I wrote them. I produced them. Did all the behind-the-scenes work. Did the directing, but hired an actual film crew to make it. And then I started to see how much money we were paying that film crew, and then I was like, I could do this. And that's how I started making more videos on my own. They let me kind of learn, start making stuff for social media. Then I happened to, it turns out I had an eye for it, got kind of good at it. That's when people started hitting me up, and that's kind of how Bright Lights Media came to be.
Let me ask you a quick question. When did you start to realize that that this was going to be a venture? I mean, going to make it. I mean, you were going to make it, right? I mean, when did you realize that it wasn't? There was no turning back, and this was going to make it. You were going to figure it out.
Probably when I quit my job. I mean, realistically, I was worried at first for probably about the first year or so, just because it was coming. Video was inevitable because trucking, I'm convinced, is 5 years almost to the day behind everything when it comes to marketing and advertising. And so I knew I was a little bit ahead of the curve, and that was definitely showing in like the first year. But more and more content popped up video-wise, the busier I got. At about year 2 is when it really started to take off. And there was one point, like, I think there was a few months where I was home for like 3 days out of the month because I was traveling the rest of it, going around to trucking companies and making videos. And then I was like, oh, this is pretty much what I do now.
Let's do CD Live, CDL Live. What was this taking on a big client like that, and how did you help the company with videography?
Well, so CDL Life was actually the first company, was finally the company that made me go, all right, I'm gonna go do this. They were my first outside client, and they were my biggest client, still are to this day. And I actually, now we're all under the umbrella of the same parent company. But yeah, no, it was amazing. And the fun thing with CDL Life is I'm not necessarily making like recruiting commercials and stuff like that, which are fine. But like I went over the road with an owner operator for 2 days in April of 2020 to see what things were like actually out on the road. And I got to see those drivers standing in the drive-through because they couldn't take their trucks through or go inside. You know, different things like that. You know, one time I locked myself, which I'm sure we'll probably talk about tomorrow, but I locked myself with my business partner at the time in a truck in 95-degree weather with the windows up without running it or running the APU to protest idling laws. You know, and so you get to do like a lot of cool stuff like that not only speaks to the driver, but actually can speak to other people that the driver can show and say, here, this is a problem.
Did you have and I hear some of the self-awareness things and stuff like that. Here at BCB Live, we focus on safety. How often do you get involved in promoting and generating safety videos to help coincide with what's going on and helping to change the industry today? Because I'll tell you, the reason I ask that is we get so much bombardment by commercials and negativity in the industry, be it attorneys for claims and stuff like that. How are you helping to promote safety?
Well, that's kind of a can of worms with me. So as far as me personally goes, I don't know that I'm necessarily the safest person. But as far as promoting safety, I mean, if someone hired me to make a safety video, I could totally do it. You know, I think a lot of there's a lot of things that are you know, like, I guess basically trucking is painted in terrible light. You have like nuclear verdicts. You know, the driver is always assumed to be wrong and guilty until proven innocent in any sort of traffic situation. I mean, could you imagine if, I mean, it happens sometimes, but if like officers just started randomly pulling over cars to make sure like everything on their car was functional, that's kind of ridiculous. So I think we also, as an industry, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be safe. I'm saying that I think that we put so much emphasis on it because we allow those things to happen. The industry placates to those situations, but we don't do anything really, I feel like, to push back. Because trucking is safer than I think the motoring public thinks that it is. But also, a lot of the times when trucking isn't safe, it has a lot more to do with the motoring public than it does with that professional driver going down the road.
Oh, yeah, you're preaching. You're basically turned around and preached to the choir over here when it comes to vehicle safety and stuff like that, Paul, in regards to that. No, look, I get a big kick out of some of the stuff you're doing. I was watching. Not only it looks like you were having fun, but you were also making a emotional video. I mean, a sentimental video, a video with cause. How do you differentiate those two when you sit down and get great ideas about what you're fixing to do?
Well, I mean, I think it ultimately comes down to, like I was talking about earlier with storytelling. Not every video is going to have a story. Some of them are informational, that kind of thing. But I think a lot of it boils down to what is the story, what is the goal of the video, and then just being aware. So it was a while ago, but like in that compilation was the Wreaths Across America video.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people would have missed the point, and a lot more people would have been even angry if I had tried to make that a funny video. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I get that.
And then the same thing with some of the funny videos, like you can address those issues in a serious way, but it's a lot harder to talk to people about negative things or to basically show people like the error of their ways in a serious way, because a lot of people get turned off on that because a lot of people don't think their own stuff stinks. But when you make a joke out of it, they listen.
Yeah, I'd agree with you 100%. Not very many people of us will, in a crowded room, not very many people will raise their hand and say they're bad drivers.
Right.
I mean, everybody thinks they're ultimately a good driver. And if we have so many great drivers out there on the road, why do we have so many accidents? It's not just one guy running around bumping into people. I mean, it's a whole bunch of different people. Look, you also work with your co-host over there, Charles, at Cents Per Mile, correct?
Yep.
So tell me about that venture as well.
Well, so me and Charles both have some pretty interesting takes on a lot of things. Me having spent a lot of time with drivers, and I interview drivers essentially for a living. Charles having, been a driver, been a recruiter, etc., now running a third-party recruiting company, been, worked on like in operations. So we got a lot of, a pretty big grasp on a lot of different aspects of things. And we just realized like there weren't a whole lot of voices out there that were trying to speak to the industry for the driver.
What's the biggest reward you're getting from that Cents Per Mile? What's the biggest reward are you getting for personally?
Well, I mean, ultimately, what I said at the very beginning, if I could get one company to change their mind about the way they do things to make one driver's life better, I'd call it mission accomplished. And I've gotten some pretty cool emails about people like actually talking to me about like different things they're doing now because of things that they heard on there, or like things that have made them think about, or they'll say, hey, I was listening to something you said, it made a lot of sense. What do you think about this idea? And the fact that it's actually starting conversations, helping people break away from it's always been like this, if it ain't broke, don't fix it type mentality. I think it's really what we need, because, a lot of people are talking about like, oh, we need to get younger people into trucks. It's like, well, I mean, a lot of people, call me what you will, but I'm a millennial, and we don't want to work or whatever. But you can't get millennials in trucks. I don't know how you're going to get Gen Z in trucks.
Yeah, go ahead.
And the only way you're going to do that is to make the job appealing again. Because trucking is not what it used to be. Even your, like upper 40s, 50s crowd, which makes the average age for a driver, they'll even agree it's not what it used to be. And it's not really, when you can make the same amount of money or even a couple $1,000s less working from home, why would you go drive a truck?
Yeah, it has changed dramatically over the years. I know firsthand, having been a truck driver for many, many years and an owner-operator, I can tell you that in and of itself has changed. There's been so many, it's been a huge paradigm shift in the way not only that we look at truck drivers, but also how they look at themselves and also where they see their future in the industry. I mean, it is crazy in and of itself. Does Cents Per Mile and Bright Lights Media, I know do they feed off one another in both ideas and content?
Not necessarily. So Bright Lights Media is just what I go under whenever I go out and make videos. That's just that is completely separate from cents per mile. Cents per mile is just pretty much us talking about, issues like that. So the content doesn't really go back and forth. I guess technically with cents per mile between me and my producer Josh, me being a part of that process, I guess it kind of crosses over in that way. But realistically, they're two pretty separate ventures.
Give me some ideas on some of your new videos you're gonna be doing and what you want to be doing here within the next year or two.
Well, I've got and I think I'm on tomorrow. We're talking about it, but I've got a mini documentary dropping tomorrow, actually, on the CDL Life YouTube, where I follow hours of service as an office employee and live in a storage closet for 2 hours. My goal is to show how tight hours of service is, but then it kind of spirals into a slightly darker narrative and realizing some things and putting some pieces together. So that's cool. And then other than that, I think a lot of it actually really kind of comes as it comes. It's not really planned. It's just like, hey, this would be a good idea.
So we're looking forward to, I'll tell you what, Josh, Paul, we're looking forward to really waiting for the movie. Because obviously we're headed toward, do you want to do a movie one day about truckers?
Oh my gosh. I've actually talked to a couple people about it. I would love nothing more, because I love making documentaries. Those are my favorite kinds of things to make. Less agenda and more just like telling a pure story, not acting, just real. I would love, I've thought about trying to find ways to get sponsors and stuff like that, but to actually go around the country and like find some owner operators or even drivers, who have been around for 30, 40 years and actually get all of their stories and kind of compile them to show the change of the industry over like the last 40 years. That would be a dream. It would probably cost a few $10,000. If anyone listening wants to bankroll that, hit me up.
Well, you know what? You put me in for $10 and I will go ahead and throw that in. We'll just get the conglomerate together. And we'll just get a whole bunch of people to do that together. I'm telling you what, Paul, it's really interesting what you're doing. Some of your videos speak for themselves. They don't really need any of us to tell you. You want to get how do they get a hold of you, Paul, if they want you to come in, help them with a video, help them with education, help them with any way they can? How do they get out and reach out to you?
Honestly, I'm mostly active on LinkedIn. It's just Paul Gibson. And then Paul at brightlightsmediakc.com. Is my email. Those are honestly the two best ways to get a hold of me.
All right, and I do appreciate it. We will talk. We're going to be talking to you tomorrow as well. But before you get out of here today and you're by yourself, I always ask our guests if they would do one thing. Would you please state your name, who you're with, and that you're watching BCB Live, the safest station in the nation?
I'm Paul Gibson from Bright Lights Media, and you're watching BCB Live, the safest station in the nation.
Hey, thanks again, Paul. We'll see you tomorrow. We'll see you on the show, and we'll have the panel together to get that going as well. How's that?
All right, sounds good. Talk to you soon.
All right, see you soon. All right, bye. All right, we'll be back in just a second here on BCB Live, the safest station in the nation, to talk a little bit about safety right after this. All right, and we're back here on BCB Live, the safest station in the nation. Drive Safe Dave here along with Double Check Dale. And Double Check Dale's going to tell us what not to do, right?
That's correct. in lane changes, what not to do in lane
That's
changes.
what I meant. That's what I. Well, we were going to get it
because
straightened out.
The other list would be way too long, but you know, there's a lot of do's and don'ts with them. Yesterday we talked about the do's if you're going to make a lane change and planning on making that. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the don'ts. Don't cross a solid white line.
Negative or two.
Or cross more than one lane at once, or two.
Or two.
Yeah, change lanes through an intersection. You know,
negative.
Yeah, we have a lot of conversation about intersections and how dangerous they are, and changing lanes close to them or in them is never a good idea. Don't change lanes when distracted. Don't tailgate when you're changing lanes, and don't make quick or last second changes. You know, we show videos from time to time. Drivers will send them in about where they'll miss an exit, where a driver's about to miss an exit, and instead of going up to the next one and turning around, the safest thing to just kind of crank it on over and take traffic with them. Not a good idea. Don't do that. Don't be that driver.
Do not be that driver. Look, a lot of these are simple. A lot of these are the rules of the road, and most of them are with the intention of being safe without pause. I mean, you just have to know that you can't do these things if you want to be 100% safe out there on the road. You've got to pay attention to what you're doing. You've got to give yourself the time to do it correctly, and always think of an out whenever it is you do it. If you're going to miss the exit, it's okay. Yep. Miss the exit. It's way better than taking somebody's life. It's way better than risking your own. It's way better than the alternative can be.
Yeah, yesterday we talked about the do's. The first one we said was plan ahead. You know, if you plan ahead, most of these things, the don'ts, don't even come into play. So just plan ahead.
Plan ahead and do the best that you can. All right, let's watch a couple of videos before we get out of here of something that happened yesterday on the road.
Oh, and we talk about this a lot, and it's following too close. We just have to.
Well, I'll just cut over.
There you go, but we're still following too close. And
I'll make a quick lane change.
Don't.
And I'll go from one tailgating situation immediately to another.
Yeah. You know, and if you just back off, have that space, and you're 2 seconds back behind this vehicle, the traffic in the left-hand lane clears you quicker, and you can move over, don't lose any time, and it's safer. Wow.
Next video.
What do you think?
Okay, I'm questioning the strap job done on the truck to the right. And first of all, I don't think that's correct. And then secondly, why are you hanging out next to this guy? Why would you want to? Yeah. Why would you ever want to just hang out right here behind another tractor trailer?
Yep. And the third thing, when the other ones come along both sides of you, any out you may have had is gone because you're not owning the space between you and the vehicle.
You don't have one in front of you. You don't have one to the left. And you don't have one to the right. Yep. Definitely a situation in which you don't want to be there.
You know, going across that bridge, we're too close. Just got to back off again. You know, we see this off. You know, the interesting thing here is where the speed is way down. Just goes to show no matter what the speed is, you have to have that proper following distance. Last one here, we look at this, and you know, I think the driver sending in it was a harsh brake and didn't make the turn. And so I got to talking to the driver and looking into a little bit different. The driver actually did something we should never.
That looks like a U-turn maneuver.
Yep.
And then all of us repositioning the tractor so he doesn't roll over the curb, and then cutting it and causing the trailer to jackknife a little bit more.
Yep.
Am I correct in my assumption?
You are correct in your assumption.
I have actually seen this maneuver firsthand, and I know full well what you should and should not do. And you know what? Over jackknifing a trailer is not really a good idea. No. And don't do that in the middle of the road.
Yeah, because once he starts doing that and gets that across, that trailer is blocking that whole lane of traffic. No place to go, and that is not a good place to be.
And another thing is, I noticed quickly that the driver placed that vehicle in reverse without getting out to look where they were going. And you should never back up a tractor trailer without getting out and looking, correct?
That is correct, because it's pretty easy for vehicles to slide in too close to where you can't see them in the mirrors. You go, well, there was nobody back there. How many times have we heard that when we back into somebody? Well,
there were so many weird things about that video.
Yeah, it was interesting, but I do appreciate the driver sharing it with us.
Absolutely. You know what? It's all about being honest with ourselves and what we're going to do to be better going forward. All right. Hey, we hope everybody has a great and wonderful and a safe day. We'll see y'all tomorrow here on BCB Live.
The safest station in the nation.
All right, we'll see you then. Bye, everybody.